Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink. Episode 41 is brought to you by our incredible local friends in Waggle Golf, 9 Mile Brewing, and the officially unofficial craft beer of the Minnesota Wild, Barrel Theory Beer Company. Back here with me, as usual, is Joe Smith of The Athletic, bringing you all the insider info on your Minnesota Wild and Gopher Hockey. Joe, welcome back. Weird. I don't know why. It just always feels really weird for me Thanksgiving week. Most people start the week off pretty normal and then get into the holiday. But I was driving today, back from Minneapolis, at 4:15 and I barely hit traffic. And I'm just oh yeah, that's right. People just designate this a whole holiday week.
Well, it is. And that's one of the busiest travel weeks of the year, right?
Yeah.
And then isn't the day before Thanksgiving the biggest drinking day of the year or the biggest drinking night? I think
Blackout
it's the
Wednesday.
Yeah. So look a little bit differently, I think, for us now with a 5-month-old, but blackout shades maybe kind of thing. But yeah, no, it's such everyone tries to figure out how many days they don't have to work on Thanksgiving week. It's can I cut out early on Wednesday and then no one works on Friday, right? Who works Friday after Thanksgiving?
People work Friday. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I have friends that have to work Friday and it ruins their plans. One of my really good buddies, he tries to go out to Chicago and do Thanksgiving with his family and he can't because he has to work Friday and he isn't willing to use the PTO on it because he's stubborn. So,
well, what's the productivity on a Friday after Thanksgiving? It's
zero.
Well, and I feel too that every person in Minnesota has some sort of relative in Wisconsin that they go to see for Thanksgiving or something. Okay. Or there's a lot of our friends are going away for. We're staying here for Thanksgiving. Are hosting a few people here at our new place, so nice. Looks exciting. With turkey trot in our neighborhood, which is fun. So we can't quite run since our baby is 5 months, and you can't run in a stroller with a baby that young, which is
yeah.
But yeah, it's a cool thing. They have the communities out there. You could do, brunches included afterwards, and a mimosa and Bloody Mary bar and stuff. So it'd be a good way to introduce ourselves to some neighbors and nice. Trot along. And hopefully it's not 15 or 10 degrees out. It's going to be. It was one thing if you're running, one thing if you're walking with a stroller. So I think this is going to be the definition of a trot for us in this time.
And I got to be honest here, because obviously you guys are runners. I'm just not about that life. But I got to say, running on Thanksgiving is the last thing that I will ever do. If I'm going to run, that is the last day. If I'm ranking all 365 days, that's the one that I'm absolutely 101 draft pick. Don't make me run on Thanksgiving.
Well, it's you earn the calories later on, right? Once you have that turkey trot in the morning or you run a 5K or 10K, you're okay, I was going to bring it down anyways with all the stuff and the sides and the food and the drinks. But now I feel hey, I can be guilt-free if I ran in the morning, all of a sudden not have to worry about that food coma later on. So I think, it's a tradition unlike any other, just like the Masters, and looking forward to doing it and seeing how we can stuff our faces after that.
Yeah. See, that's the difference between you and me, Joe. You're a good person and you have guilt on Thanksgiving. Me, Thanksgiving, greatest day of the year. There's zero guilt flowing through my body. It is football, beer, food, nap, rotate, rinse and repeat. That's just my one day where I can't feel like a piece of garbage. Most days I'd feel like a piece of garbage doing it, but Thanksgiving, I just give myself a blanket pass.
And I'll have all those things too. I'll have all the food, the nap, and the bourbon and the fire and whatever else goes on. I'll just have I'll have an earlier wake up call than you do. Let's just say that, depending on when Logan wakes up, but it'll be an earlier active morning than maybe you guys will have.
More active for sure. Earlier, we'll see what happens. Both of us, I think we just cross our fingers and say please sleep an extra 15 minutes. Let's go. All right. But today, people, on the eve of Thanksgiving, we've got some Gopher talk. We've got a meaty Minnesota Wild mailbag. We got some hot takes. We'll get out of here. You can all get off to enjoying this fantastic holiday. Joe, just seeing your reactions as I sent you the link to the Alaska Fairbanks Nanooks promo video that I don't know, half the people listening know exactly what I'm talking about already and just got excited and got a big smile. The others are like, what are you talking about, dude? We will absolutely link this in the description on the YouTube feed. And actually, we'll see. I'll tinker with it. We'll see if there's any trademark issues with me throwing it in, but maybe I'll find a way to load that in on the YouTube version of this episode releasing. So I would drop it right now if I do. But otherwise, Joe, just tell me what initial reactions being a first-time viewer of this magnificent cinematic adventure.
Well, I mean, I think every team has one of those like cheesy intro videos where they like destroy the other team's logo, right? Like everyone does that, right? But this is what got me is the intro, which is the old Chicago Bulls entry for starting lineups, which takes me back to my childhood, right? Grew up watching the Pistons and Bulls, and then obviously the Top Gun theme. I don't want to spoil the thing for everybody else, but it feels like people just got together, like had like a bunch of beer and whatever and pizza, stay up till 3 a.m. So let's find the coolest thing we can do to break this entryway. So, yeah, I really appreciate creativity and I appreciate people who pushed the envelope there, and they certainly did.
I refuse to believe that 0 drugs were used in the creation of this video. If that's not enough of a promo for you all to go watch this promo video, just go do it. But so we've got the Nanooks this coming weekend, but last weekend, sweep Notre Dame with those disgusting golden domes. I just don't like those helmets, Joe. I don't know what your opinion is on them. Do you have an opinion one way or the other on the Notre Dame buckets?
I don't really care for them or either way. Like I like the tradition, the colors, and the football jerseys and stuff, and the gold. Yeah. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Hockey just is obviously out of the ordinary, so not a huge fan of it. But it wouldn't ruin my night. So
yeah, no, that's fair. It didn't ruin my night, but I will say their cream jerseys that they wore, those look really cool. And of course, I think they're like 0-5 wearing them, so maybe that's just unfortunate for them. But Gophers pull off the sweep, and Bob today at media availability, was very happy with the compete and the effort that the team brought forward. And I know a big piece that actually Eric Vigo hit on the show last week here with us, net front presence. Bob said much better, much more polished. We didn't really get answers from people, but I'm not sure if you saw the replay or anything, Joe. Pretty gruesome knee on knee for Brody Lamb, and people were pretty nervous, pretty worried. Sounds like we avoided a major issue. No ligament damage. Sounds like there's an outside chance of him playing this weekend. I'm not going to hold my breath on it, but I think the hope is he can be back for the Michigan series. And we got Cal Thomas hopeful for this weekend. We'll see. But all positives coming out of the weekend, like outside of the injury, took care of business. And it was a different kind of game or series, I guess. It's kind of like what you saw with Bemidji and with Penn State, but this is a gritty team that kind of went over the line a lot. Like this felt, even just looking at the comments on social media from all the fans, like this is a dirty team. And I don't want to blanket label the entire team with that, but it just, I haven't seen a Notre Dame team that was like this questionable this regularly like we saw throughout these games.
Yeah, it's a tough one to go historically on that. Usually you have the bigger rivalries with like Wisconsin and that and Michigan, but for a November weekend series there, definitely got more quote unquote chippy than usual. But I mean, I think when you're one of the top teams in the nation, like the Gophers are, you're getting together teams, who are undermanned, considering you have to find ways to get other teams' skin and try to find a way to disrupt them a bit. Now, I wouldn't recommend knee-to-knee as a situation to that. And I think it brought back little memories there for Wild fans of seeing Kaprizov, the knee on knee the other day, which again, like that's something where he came back and played against Winnipeg, which is a huge boost, but that was probably a scary moment for a lot of Wild fans to see that happen because he's out to an MVP start, and he's on my ballot 2 years ago, number 3, when no one else had him on their ballot like that. But I think he's legitimately the MVP candidate this year.
I mean, Russo said it perfectly when he was on with us. Like, the people that said that, the Wild are arguably like the 6 or 7 team in the Central, for them to be doing what they're doing, how can you not have Kaprizov at the top of your heart ballot? Like, you're a complete hypocrite if you take that stance. But man, the knee on knee is just scary every time. And there are times where like it is completely accidental. This is one that felt avoidable. I'm not saying it was like a deliberate, like, I'm going to destroy your knee, but like it felt like he could have made more of an effort to avoid the collision.
And I think the Wild brass were pretty ticked overall as another example of Kaprizov, being injured, taking a shot from somebody, the quote unquote depth players on a certain team going out there and taking a shot at the best player. And, nothing can derail a season more than losing a superstar on a play like that. If it's like a heat of the moment, like puck battle against the board, something happens, takes an elbow or whatever, like I get it, but no one, no hockey player, appreciates or, thinks it's any very few dirtier plays than like knee on knee. I think, obviously the headshots are more dirty, right? But like knee on knee, but like those are things that can really take out a guy's career, not just season.
Yeah, agreed. I honestly don't think I could label either one worse. Like they're both, like it's one capital A and one lowercase a between the two. But speaking of star talent, Snuggerud, Wood, Rinzel, I feel like all 3 of them are at least building candidacies towards being Hobie nominees. I don't think it's going to be like 2023 where we get 2 in. And hey, it might be one of those years where we're just like so balanced top to bottom that you don't get anybody in as a nominee. But out of the 3, do you have a leaning of like who you think is the best or strongest Hobie candidate once we get to March? Obviously, like a lot of season yet to play, but thus far, who's pacing that way?
Well, as far as like quote unquote name recognition of returning is Snuggerud, right? A guy that with the NHL, like all 3 are NHL prospects, not like it's like one's top guy, but like Rinzel can be kind of a sneaky pick, I think, just because of the plays that he's made all season long. And he's obviously a touted prospect himself, and he'll be in the NHL on short order. But I think just overall impact on a game, like I think that he, the 3 of them none of them really separated themselves very much from each other. But I think he could be one of those sticky picks.
I think it's incredible having all 3. But I'm with you that like Snuggerud obviously has the name recognition, and he's had a great start. Like he is, if they give him even an inch of space on that power play, good night, Jim Kite. But I've been on the Rinzel train since week 1. I think this guy is having a different kind of year. And if he can keep even remotely the pace that he has, watch out. Like I'm so sad that this guy's going to be playing for Chicago at some point. That's just such a bummer.
Yeah.
But awesome to have all 3 of them regardless. I believe Snuggerud and Wood are both top 5, top 10 in scoring in the country, and Rinzel having crazy numbers for a defenseman, but he's impacting the game a lot beyond just the numbers there. But the one thing that I brought up to Bob in the presser, Joe, this feels like the easiest look ahead weekend in the history of look ahead weekends, right? You've got Thanksgiving. You've been on the road for most of the season. You get the first of 3 weekends at home leading into the holiday break. And what's on the other side of this weekend? Michigan and Michigan State.
Yeah.
And so like I asked him about that, and he like flat out said like one of the things he loves about these players and the leadership group he has in there, which a hefty leadership group with 6 captains, said like there has been zero issue keying in on the weekend at hand. Like they are very focused on each individual series and not looking forward to the next one. And Jimmy even said like, yeah, almost kind of do a double take and worry more about the like unranked matchups, because if you lose one of these games, it's got a way bigger impact in the pairwise. So like he actually kind of flipped it and said, yeah, like these definitely matter. We are not looking past it. So good to know, but that's the one thing I'd kind of lean in on as we go into this weekend. Like if you see a slow start or if you see one of the games go awry, I feel like that's like the easiest excuse in the world, being like, oh yeah, we're looking at the other 2 juggernauts in the Big Ten who we've got back-to-back weekends after this.
Yeah, I mean, the quote-unquote trap game, of course, but yeah, I mean, I think the talent should take over in this particular case. Like promo videos aside, I think that's going to be the end.
I think the Gopher players need to watch that promo video going in. I don't care if it's for Alaska. That'll get anyone jacked up. It's like the craziest form of smelling salts for your eyes. But we'll see how that goes. Hey, all you hockey fans, stop into 9 Mile Brewing this week to grab a couple fan favorites making their return to the lineup. First up, Hat-Trick Triple Berry Sour. Originally brewed in collaboration with the Minnesota Whitecaps, RIP in peace. This is a tart beer loaded with a hat trick of flavors. See what they did there? Raspberry, blueberry, and blackberry. Actually a really good mix. I'm typically not a fan of sour beers, but I would definitely drink this one again. Also back on tap is Mallet Mike's Rye Porter, a straightforward, traditional porter that's just what you need as we head into the winter season. Hit the 9 Mile website or any of their social pages for a full events calendar, because you want to make sure that you're not the one that misses out. Let's talk Minnesota Wild, Joe. And before we get into the mailbag segment, just quick like overview. We're 1 game away from, the Thanksgiving milestone, or sorry, let me make Elliot Friedman happy. U.S. Thanksgiving being the key decision maker that pretty much, what is it? I think the average every year is that there's like 4 teams that will like swap either direction.
Yeah.
After Thanksgiving, whether you're in or out of the playoffs. Wild firmly in and playing great. Where are we at? We just had a pretty important matchup there with Winnipeg, obviously. We've had some pretty big matchups the past week or two. What's the overview and assessment?
Well, I think they're in a really great spot. Like they put themselves in a position with the start that they had, that they have some cushion now versus other seasons in recent past where they had to chase it for the whole entire year. So now you have Zuccarello out for several weeks, and you had the injury Kaprizov. That was a scare. You've bumps and bruises here and there, but they find ways to get points in some of these games. Maybe they don't play their best hockey. And a lot of road games in their first 2 months. So that'll come in handy. I think in March they have like 2 road games all month, right? So that'll come in handy down the stretch where they can, in theory, make up some ground or whatever. Though they played better on the road than they have at home this year for whatever reason. But yeah, I think, the fact that they've had so many different guys step up, and we talked about Kaprizov's MVP candidate, Bully's having a terrific year. Rossi, we'll talk about him later, playing in different up and down the lineup, having some strong games as well. The blue line, Faber has no sophomore slump. The key is keeping guys like Brody healthy. So, and they'll get potentially like Aziz Bayam, like end of the year too, is another guy on the blue line. So I think the only question I think the people are having now is because they've had this great start and the feel good hockey right now, but they still haven't yet to kind of eclipse that against the best teams, right? Or best teams in their division, who they would play in the first round of the playoffs, right? I mean, most likely if they're not, unless they're the wild card and go on to face whoever else in the Vegas or whoever, like you're going to get Winnipeg or Dallas or whoever, and Colorado's going to come back and make a run too. So
naturally,
you know, they've been better this year, like as far as competitively and like in those games against the Dallas and Winnipegs, but they still haven't been, winning all these games. So that's the next step for them. I think mentally, it's more of a mental thing for me. They have the goaltending that's been playing well this year. They've got a lot of the talent and like the style of hockey they've been playing. They're really, really connected as a group, but I think to win some of these games in the regular season, even though they're regular season games, would mean a lot going forward if they have to go, let's say, face Winnipeg in the first round, which could be the case.
Yeah, that's fair. Before we get in the mailbag, gotta ask, 'cause I feel like this would be in your wheelhouse. Are you a cribbage guy?
Not a cribbage guy.
Right,
Sorry.
I misread that. I misread it.
Yeah.
So it's really just euchre then. Is that the only card game?
Euchre, we played that home recently. Yeah, that's great. Euchre was a big thing growing up. I'll play Hold'em and other pokers like that.
Sure.
Yeah. But
okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
All
right.
Board games and stuff, but yeah.
Well, yeah. No. Plenty of games for sure, but outside of cards. Well, I got a delicious beer here, and it's going to sound a little abstract to you, and like honestly, it sounded weird to me at first too, but I think it's delicious. It definitely hits the mark for me. But from our friends at 9 Mile, it's called 2 for his nibs. Anyone that understands how the game is played, nibs is when the jack gets flipped on the cut and you get 2 points. But it's a wheated whiskey, barrel-aged honey bush vanilla red ale. A lot of words, a lot of flavor, a lot of complexity, but it's delicious. So shout out to them. Another just interesting one from John, who crushes everything over there. A former Dangerous Man brewer who he has not missed from what I've tasted over there. So everyone, go check them out, support. This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it. That makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order. Mailbag, Joe. We've got a handful that were thrown in. Some expected, some that are a little off the beaten path, but we'll start here with Steve Hoaglund. With Wallstedt struggling in Iowa, do you think it was a mistake to basically tell him he'd be on the team this year? The plan obviously changed with how well Gus is playing, and it sure seems like it may have gotten in his head.
Well, yeah, and we talked to him a few weeks back on the pod, and he admitted that it was a mental hurdle for him going into the year because of all the excitement that was built up late last season with his call-up and his first NHL win. And, basically Garen was telling everybody from us to the people at the state fair or whatever that there'd be a 3-goalie rotation. That was initially the plan. They wanted to get him more games, but I think I don't know what it was told to him as far as like, I'm sure they didn't tell him it was guaranteed or this was like going to happen no matter what, but I think it got into his head a little bit to where he said a little bit of a letdown going back to Iowa and had to reset himself from what the expectations were. The key for me is like he's such a very mature kid for his age and he's mentally strong. So I think that shouldn't break him this season. I know this has been a rough go, or at least the first couple of starts kind of hurt his goals against average and stuff. But I think, I think it was a mistake in general, just thinking that the 3-goal rotation was going to work in the first place versus like just telling him this. Cause I think their idea, if they didn't have injuries and that was for him to rotate in and play more games. But they also said whoever was leading them to wins was going to play more. And that was probably what even Vesper believed himself. He's like, I don't blame him for not calling me back up. Things are going too good. So yes, I think maybe the first mistake was maybe envisioning this 3-goalie rotation, maybe vocalizing it a little too much.
Sure.
Because if it was more so like they might have thought that, or like, oh, maybe this might work, but then being more cautious and saying, unless they thought that would be something that kind of sparked what either Fleury or Gustafson, right? Maybe that
Sure.
was something that was like Gustafson, who already had a chip on his shoulder going into the season, all of a
Yeah.
sudden played lights out. You're like, well, no one's getting that from him. So there's no
Yeah.
rotation.
I agree with like 90% of what you said there, but I think the key difference is like if it's to nudge, Flower and Gus, get it. If it's a matter of like, hey, we're going to throw this out as a competition, see what happens, get it. He's probably a little more bummed because like he didn't even get a chance to make his statement. Like he didn't get to play. And it's when you're told like you get your contract this summer a year early and you're told, get a place up here because this is where you're going to be. I think that was the missed mark. It's okay to say like, this is going to be an open competition, 3 goalie rotation. We'll see what happens. Like whoever plays the best gets it. But I think the one that messes with his head is when they're like, get a place up here. You're going to be up here. And then it's like, oh yeah, you're figuring out a living situation down in Iowa, like everything we told you or that you expected, whether it's what we told you or you made up in your head, like that's just gone now because of how good Gus is playing. So I think I agree with most of it. It's just the step of being like, get a place up here because this is where you're going to be. I think that maybe was where they missed the mark. I would have gone the other way, been like, there's a good chance you end up here. And I'm sorry, maybe you're going to be in a hotel or you're going to be living with some of the other guys. But like having the place in Iowa almost would have like pushed him and urged him a little bit more versus, hey, get a place here because you're going to be up here.
Yeah. And again, like, I don't know all the specifics on what exactly was told. Like, they actually said like, this is your place. Like, I think he was probably given the idea of, hey, just for preparation purposes, like, hey, you can know that you'll be a good chance to be up here. So it might make sense to have one. Like, I think that is obviously something that gets into guys' heads a bit in terms of you want to make sure that you are prepared at every part of your life to play in the NHL. But I think if you told him right now, he'd have to, sleep in the booth at Red Cow. I think he would do it, and I think he would play pretty well. So yeah, I think it's another really good test for him. I think overall as a top prospect, that we know his time is coming. We know it's going to be here before you know it. But this might be just one of the little blip on the radar for him going forward, and it's worked out well for the Wild. Of like they wanted to go to take the net and run with it, and Gustafson has. And you're looking at right now is a Gustafson and Wallstedt tandem next year, and which would be really, really, really good.
No, I'm with you on that. All right, this next one is a lot to unpack. Geno Spenser says, I've got a question, and then tagged LaPanta and Ryan Carter, and then says, why are expectations for a 19-year-old on a horrible team higher than a number 1 center on a playoff lock? Bedard is being rightfully but heavily criticized for only having 15 points. When will Minnesota hold their number 14 Ek and his 9 points to a higher standard? What say you, Joe?
Well, Bedard is a generational prospect player that's going to be a savior of a franchise, right? And he's playing in Chicago or whatever. Like, the expectations or hype around him is going to be much higher no matter what, just based upon the fact that he is the only ticket in town, basically, in Chicago. No slight on Captain Nick Foligno, who is a wonderful human being and great player. And like,
you go to Foligno on that.
They also have good players. Like Pat Maroon's one of my favorite people in the game, like whatever. But like,
he's awesome.
Bedard is the future, right? And was like in that McDavid realm of like hype going into the draft. So Eriksson Ek took a different route to get there, and he is extremely important to the Wild. And anybody who watches them or scouts them will tell you he's probably the most irreplaceable player on the team. So I think it's not a slight that they're like, oh well, why isn't he not having more than nine this or 9 that? Like, his value goes way beyond the point totals or the goal totals. And if he plays on the line with Kaprizov and Boldy more often, he'll get more points. But I think just not that Ek is that much, quote unquote, worse of a player than Bedard. It's just the expectations were set at a certain level from the beginning with a guy who's going to build a franchise around. Yeah. And Ek is a cornerstone of this team because of how important he is. But it's just a whole different mindset to me. No one's going to question Ek's overall impact on the game or overall importance based on the fact that he doesn't have that many points right now.
Yeah, completely different players. And it's a stretch to even say that Ek is the 1C, right? Like he's played 2 games on the first line. And I think there's a difference too, where his impact defensively light years beyond what Bedard is doing. And that's not what you're expecting from Bedard, but that's just like to show like you're getting different things from both guys. And I don't really care what his points are if the line that he's driving is scoring. Like the team's winning. You're not going to ever complain about a player not scoring when the team is winning, except for everyone about Trenin, but we won't dive back into that wormhole. But I don't know. I just think it's completely different players. Like you hold them to completely different standards for a reason. I'm not worried about X production whatsoever.
I'm not worried about Bedard either. I mean, he'll be a heck of a player. But yeah, Eriksson Ek is one of those guys that, yeah.
Well, actually, I'm going to save it for hot takes. I got another hot take for us, Joe. We'll save it for, All right, we'll get back to that. From our good friend, Tim Johnson. That's right, the proprietor of Barrel Theory Beer Company. So we're about a quarter of the way through the season. What do the Wild have to do to become an actual playoff contender? I know it's early. Seems like we can't beat Dallas and we can't beat the Jets. Like, seems like a decent problem to have. Is it just as simple as like we just have to beat each of them at least once this year to just like tell ourselves in our mind that it can be done? Or is there something you see the team philosophically needing to change to get them to a place where they can beat those kind of teams?
I don't think a system needs to change, and we'll find out and talk more as it goes along if they need to add somebody at the deadline to bolster that and give them a chance. They haven't been overmatched, quote unquote, against some of those teams this year, but they still haven't found that edge to win. Like I said earlier in this show, that it is important, I think, mentally for them to find ways to go in those buildings and win and beat these teams, because as well as they played against Dallas a couple of years ago in the playoffs and they were up 2-1, and they still found a way to lose that series. And I don't think people are going to believe the Wild as a contender in the playoffs until they get over that hurdle of winning a first-round series. So no matter what they do in the regular season, there'll be question marks going to the playoffs, and that's fair because of the history. Do I think this is a team that could, break that streak? I do think they can. Absolutely. But, one thing to say they can, another thing to kind of go do it. But I think they really learned a lot from the last couple of years, chip on their shoulder from last season. A lot of the players that they were hoping for bounce back years, they're getting it. They have some relatively good health and a superstar two superstars basically, who can kind of drive the ship offensively, and a Norris caliber guy and Faber on defense. So I think they have a lot of pieces to win a playoff round, but they're not going to get a lot of believers until they go out and prove it, which is why I think I don't have an X they need to do like this at the deadline, or they need this kind of player to make a difference. I think just getting over that hurdle mentally and beating some of these teams in this season will be helpful. Even though playoffs are a different game and things change, I think it'll be good going into a 7-game series against a team that they'll have to play.
Yeah, it's a weird like double-edged sword, Joe, where there's really nothing they can do in the regular season to prove to me that they're ready to compete in the playoffs, right? That doesn't mean they can't do good things in the regular season that like give us positive signs, but they could literally win the President's Trophy and it still isn't going to tell me that like, yep, they're ready for playoffs. I think all we need to do is get into the postseason, make sure that we're firing on all cylinders when we do, and then that first series, whoever it's against, that's going to tell us what we need to know. Like we really won't know until that first round, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just saying the things that could help them in that position when they're in the first round series. But like I said, they're not going to get a lot of believers until they actually go through that. And what better way than kind of exercising those demons for the first round, plus going up against a Dallas or Winnipeg or whoever they might play if they do get in that top 3 spot. That would be one way to get through it. And then all of a sudden that'll give you a lot of big boosts going into the next way.
Yeah, no, sorry. My tone might have thrown that off. I was definitely like agreeing with you there. So we're on the same page. And to your point on what don't we do at the deadline, Cappy's Gas, a great bourbon hound like ourselves. Shout out, buddy. Do you think the reality of Boeser likely wanting to come here in free agency makes it tougher for Billy to give up much of anything to take him for an extra 2 months?
Well, I mean, are there I guess I think it kind of depends on where they're at the deadline. If there are injuries in the top 6 that all of a sudden a guy that, you might need to fill a hole that you didn't think you had before. I think the question makes sense in terms of don't give away something for what you might be able to get quote unquote for free or just for cap purposes in the summertime. But this is a team that probably feels a lot of pressure to win now, right? And should prove to the fan base and the core to prove that they can win in the playoffs. So if there's a way to get somebody, whether I don't know if it's a Boeser, but somebody, and Brock Nelson's name has been thrown out a lot for other teams, and he'll be a team guy that contending teams will try to go after. If there's an injury or something that happens that creates that spot where they need some punch up front, then I wouldn't put him past it at all to at least to try on that. I mean, and this is going to the fact that Vancouver won't make the playoffs or they won't be sellers or whatever. We don't know what'll happen at that point, but I think it all depends on what this team and the situation looks like more into March.
No, totally fair. Next one up, Evan Nowitzki. Why has Rantanen not been extended in Colorado? Is he planning on being a UFA or riding it out with the Avs?
It's a good question. I don't have any insider information on that one in particular about why he hasn't signed yet. To look at their cap space and see how much that they have left. I know he's kind of one of those really important players for them, a very versatile player and a guy that will probably be in top of a lot of teams' wish lists if he does make it to UFA.
Right.
But
probably
I think
going to Chicago, right?
Everyone who wants to be a UFA will go to Chicago to play with Connor Bedard. He needs 2 wings, right? So whatever.
That's right.
But yeah, I think they're trying to figure themselves out right now. The Avalanche, they've had a team that won the Cup a few years back, and they're trying to get Landeskog back, and they're trying to figure out what do they actually have here. And so if you're Rantanen, you're going to be getting a whole lot of money no matter what in the summertime. And I think if you're Colorado, you're like, well, what team do we have right now? Or what are missing holes? Whatever. You don't want to overcommit to everybody in your team for long term, not knowing where you're at. So how's Landeskog's health, and how reliable are some of the other guys?
Can Nichushkin stay in the lineup? Who knows?
Yeah, can you stay out of trouble? Can you stay in the lineup? What's your goaltending look like? So a lot of these things have to be play into account.
That was hilarious the other night when they were getting absolutely bulldozed. And it was like, all right, they have taken Georgiev out of the game for a Noonan. And then 20 minutes later, and Georgiev has re-entered the game. But I'll say, Joe, and everyone listening knows, I have zero insider access. So this is me just speaking off the dome. I feel like the conjecture the last couple weeks around the salary cap increase is probably a big factor in this. I would think that, I don't see a world where he's not going back to Colorado. And it's a matter of what's he going to ask for and what can the team stomach and where do they find a middle ground. But the amount that salary cap is going to go up is probably going to play a big role in where that ultimately lands. That's my gut, but hey, if he, like you said, Joe, if he ends up going to free agency, everyone's coming after him except for the Wild because there's no chance they can afford him. But next one up from Made in Minnesota. Is the long-term Marco Rossi outlook favorable? Seems like he has the production, but not the all-in commitment from the Wild as far as his role. Something we've talked about quite a bit.
I mean, is his long-term outlook favorable overall as an NHL player? I think it is. I think I don't know if he's going to be a superstar in this league, but he's going to be a solid, reliable, productive center in this league, really strong two-way guy. And again, like I more think along the lines of the idea that if the Wild continues to believe in him, there'd be more of a bridge deal thing versus a long-term deal out of RFA. Just my sense. But yeah, I mean, I think it's early in his career and he's gone through a lot of different hurdles, but I think he's going to be an NHL player for a long time. It doesn't matter of how does that look with the Wild. Do they both play ball and do a short-term bridge deal as they see? I'd want to see what Urov can do before all of a sudden I ship Rossi out, right? I think a bridge deal would be smart for both sides, and Rossi's going to get paid if he continues to produce the way he is capable of producing. So I think the long-term future of him is bright. It's more so of I don't think it's going to be a long-term deal this summer if they do sign him.
No, I completely agree. I think there's no world where this doesn't end in some kind of a bridge deal. The exception being if someone just comes to you with a deal that you can't turn down, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like the Cole Perfetti type deal makes like a ton of sense, right? Give him 4.5, give him 2 or 3 years, but everything makes the most sense. Works for both sides, gives him a chance to prove himself either to stay or get more money somewhere else. Gives you the time to evaluate the other guys and see, hey, is Rossi a 1C? Is he a 3C? Like, what the heck is he? But we'll see. Last piece here then for our great friends at Waggle.
Final question brought to you as always by our good friends at Waggle Golf. First, make sure you head over to getyourwaggleon.com. Throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order.
No Waggle Golf foursome here, but we're going to do a Waggle Thanksgiving foursome. Joe, your call. Are we drafting the 4 best Thanksgiving foods or the 4 worst Thanksgiving foods?
Best.
All right, we're going 4 best, and I'll let you lead off. We're going 4 best, and I think the one distinction I'll make is I feel like turkey is too generic.
Yeah.
Like it's either got to be white meat, dark meat, specific cut of it, something like that. But go off. Anything that's part of the Thanksgiving meal, what is your one overall?
I will say this because it's something I've loved for a long time, and my wife makes a killer dish of this. It's green bean casserole. That's something I'm going to go.
Bitch.
I'm going to go. I'm not going to go plain
No one
Jane
takes
here.
it that early. That's my favorite dish. Period.
Yeah. If I'm going to have my one to pick from, I'm going to take that, right? Okay.
Wow.
Take the turkeys out of it.
I didn't think I was going to go that early. Oh, that's
tough shit, man. What's your pick?
My pick then is absolutely stuffing. And we're not talking the bullshit like boxed stuffing, store-bought. Like you got to get the real shit. It's got to be in the bird. You don't just like throw it in the microwave or in the oven solo. Good, legitimate stuffing from the bird. Awesome.
Okay. I would have to go next. Mashed potatoes.
Okay.
Stick with that, and not just mashed potatoes, but gravy and maybe garlic mashed potatoes, like a different kind of thing. Yeah, I would go with that route.
That's fair. Okay. Mm-hmm. I can understand that. On the turkey front, then, I am going specifically with the dark meat in the turkey. Dark meat is the absolute way. And of course, like gravy will be on that. Keep your cranberries away from my turkey. No one, don't allow that. But yes, the dark meat of the turkey is vastly superior to the white meat.
Yeah. Well, I might disagree with you on that one. But, but I thought turkey was off the table. So
I didn't say it was off the table. I said you got to be specific with your picks.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm equal opportunity with the turkey. So we have turkey, you have stuffing.
Well, if you feel that way, then you might want to take the white meat.
Yeah, I'll take the white meat.
Have some form of turkey on there.
Yeah. White meat.
So I got two options I'm choosing between here, and they're both kind of niche picks. I'm gonna go. Oh man. All right, I'm gonna go with the one that I think will appeal to the crowd more because it's kind of a tie for me. I'm gonna say, we'll label it as bread, but like the crescent roll, the bread, the bun, whatever you call it, it is important. It's critical for me because all I do is butter that bitch up, and what I'm gonna do is use that as just a vacuum for the entire plate. Whatever's left there, I'm just scooping all that up and I'm eating it with the roll. It's important.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, go on more carbs. Go for it.
Oh, I get one more pick. So yeah. Okay. I'll be able to pick both. Sweet.
Yeah. No, we already had 4, aren't we? Are we at 4?
Nope. We got 3 each.
Okay.
So yeah. You need one more.
All right. Tough one. I don't know what else is left. Not sure what's left. What's left?
I mean, I don't want to help you here. I mean, there's definitely things left. There's corn. You know what? I'll give you the win. I don't care. I'll tell you. You can definitely pick desserts.
I'd rather have the corn than the desserts, quite frankly. I'm not a big pie guy, so I'll take the corn and we'll wrap that up.
I'm not a huge dessert guy, but as long as it's not pumpkin pie, give me whatever pie, I'm totally in. There's a lot of people. I'm not into this, Joe. Have you had the sweet potato dish that has marshmallows on top of it?
No.
It's not my game, but I've seen it at several different locations. So it's not just oh, this is what my family does. Because actually, I don't think my immediate family even does that one. But okay, he goes corn. My other niche pick that will either win or lose this for me. How do you feel about the innards of the turkey itself, Joe? The liver, the liver, not awesome, but the gizzard is incredible. Gizzard's awesome, and actually the heart's not bad either. But maybe we're just weirdos. Yeah. Savages from Minnesota. Have you had the gizzard before?
No, I have not.
Oh, man. No. All right. Well, there's probably 10% of people that are oh, you're totally right. And the rest are you're dumb. So I'll take it. Whatever. But all right, there we go. Joe says green bean casserole, mashed potatoes and gravy, white meat, turkey, and corn. I got stuffing, dark meat, turkey, roll, crescent, bread, whatever, and gizzard. Done and done. Hot takes. Here we go. Let's jump in here for barrel theory. We have quite the onslaught here, and I know everyone's going to be checking them out once we get to the X for some of the upcoming games. Important note here, though, because I'm going to try my best to get out here for it. There is a delightful slate of beers coming out, and we always tell you about the sours, the IPAs. They've still got those in spades, but they have 3 barrel-aged stouts that are launching on Black Friday. One is Cinnamon Toast Crunch themed. One has Thai banana, Nilla wafers, cacao. Sounds delightful. And another one that I can specifically speak for, the Arcane Stargazer, which they released at their anniversary party. It was my favorite of the barrel-aged beers they released there. If you're into the barrel-aged, heavy, dark beers, get out there, support Barrel Theory, and again, grab whatever you can when you go out to the X. All right. First hot take here for Keyboard Warriors, Joe. Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts claims that he believes Utah HC should remain Utah HC beyond this year.
I mean, it'd make it unique of all the teams in the league, but I still think they should have an actual name Yetis or whatever actual name.
Out of the ones they're looking at, Yeti is definitely where I'd lean to. I think it appeals to like the soccer fans is like a big thing he likes. It's like, oh yeah, like anyone that's into soccer overseas or here, like the FC thing. Like, don't call it the hockey club. It's Utah HC is basically the team name. And I also it'd be interesting where you could essentially have like rotating mascots if you don't actually have like a team mascot. But it's definitely a Friedman thing. I don't strongly lobby for it, but once he said it, I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Next one, just real quick. I just need to say this for everyone because I feel like it's a hot take, but we don't need to get into it because you apparently agree. Cranberry sauce and pumpkin pie should not be on the Thanksgiving table. Garbage, trash, get it the hell out of here. Joe, I know you've got no arguments. We don't even have to discuss this. It's going to be a pretty non-eventful, and that's probably what's going to draw all the comments from people. Next one here was a little bit of a thread. I'll skip most of it, but it's essentially to the effect of the Kajula hit, right? And it leads to Derek Felska saying, Foligno seems to accept a lot of reasons not to do his job lately. He just complained after Hathaway's cheap shots to Eriksson Ek. It's really not that hard. You don't let him skate away. You bring on a scrum. Then perhaps the next shift, he takes you. You send out 38 or 94 to go after him, and kind of looped into the same discussion to condense this a little bit. Kalisha on Twitter says the Wild need to find a way to trade for Arbor Jacki from the Canadians. He stood up to Pare for kneeing Patrick Laine. He also took out Reeves, Zach Cassian, and Adam Lowry with little problems. He's a killing machine, but also brings sneaky offensive ability. People have been going nuts online, Joe. Do we have a problem with not having enforcers? Do we need to find a way to protect Kirill Kaprizov? Are we panicking here?
More of a panic move. I mean, they had Ryan Reeves, the quote-unquote best enforcer in the league, and Ryan Suter gave him tomahawk chops to the back, Kaprizov in front of the net how many times, right? So, like, I mean, I think you can have guys that hold people accountable. They'll have the biggest enforcer in the league. You need to have guys who can play actual hockey to be on their team. So I think the guys can do better overall. And you see Ryan Hartman stick up for guys, Foligno stick up for guys, but there's got to be a way to do it, without trying to need to actually get this guy just because he can maybe, quote unquote, scare somebody else, So I think it's more of a knee jerk thing. They can do a better job overall holding people accountable, but I don't think there's a big overall need. I
think in today's NHL, it's pretty tough to force someone to combat you. Like Middleton tried to go after him and he's like, oh, sure, I'll fight Boldy. Cool. You can't make someone fight you. You can do things to get in their face, but if they're not going to comply, what the heck do you do? The enforcer role isn't what it was 20 years ago. So I think it's been way overblown. And I think saying that Foligno isn't doing his job is crazy. He's played great hockey. I don't know what more you want to see from him unless you think that he's going to be the leading point getter. At which point
he sticks up for guys. He's a great leader in the room. Overall, he's been healthy this year, which has been great. And he is a guy that guys don't like fighting. He's a guy that can be that hold people accountable. And I know Jake Middleton's a guy who can do that, and Hartman and whoever. And in theory, guys like Trenin or whoever. But yeah, Foligno's not a guy you really should take shots at for what he can or can't do in that particular thing, because he's one of the guys who in previous years has been able to do that more often than not.
Yeah, agreed. But this is a lame hot take segment when we completely agree, but I know people in the comments are going to hate the Utah HC thing. They're probably going to find ways to bash Trenin in the Wild topic, and I know there's people out there that love their cranberry sauce and their pumpkin pie. So
I'm sorry, not me.
You guys come at us because I'm sorry, you're wrong. I'm not even going to make this like a discussion. You are incorrect if you think that those are good accompaniments on Thanksgiving. That's almost as bad as having ham or something like that instead of turkey. That's the lowest form of Thanksgiving. Oh man. Well, hey, Another episode here. We'll be back next week, guys, but we hope you all enjoy your Thanksgiving. Have a great time with family, friends, watch some football, drink some beer, eat a lot of food, take some naps, have a great time. Subscribe up, 5 stars for the show. Check us out on YouTube at The Soda Pod if you want to check out the video format, especially if I'm able to get that crazy drug-induced promo in from Alaska. But signing off here. Really appreciate you guys tuning in yet again. Episode 41. We're going to hit 50 before you know it. It's pretty crazy, Joe. But hey, you stay classy. Stay to hockey.
Thanks so much, guys. Happy Thanksgiving. See you soon.